Hey, Mike, that's a scene from BMF. Great, great series, and a terrific actor who is one of the most versatile actors out there. His name is Russell Hornsby, and I got to tell you, Mike, I brought this up to you earlier today, and you didn't remember it. So I'm wondering if Russell remembers it. The last time we saw him back in the day, we were on Martha's Vineyard walking down Circuit Ave. You remember that?
That's awesome.
And Mike, you had the stroller.
So I was probably distracted. Right. I think I was distracted. That's what it was, right? See, I'm like, wait a second. Yeah,
I do remember that.
It's all a blur, Russ. It's all a blur, man.
Russell,
it's just good to see you again.
Russell,
Michael remembers everything. He remembers everything.
I said it to him earlier today. I said, remember we saw him on the venue? He said, we saw him on the venue?
There's no way we met him. There's no way.
I said, it must have been, I said, Savannah was born in 06? Must have been 06 because Savannah was in the stroller. So you brought that up. Yeah. Hey, man. Hey, good to see you.
Getting old.
Good to see you, man.
Good to see you, man.
Likewise, good to see you, brothers, man. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Really, let's start right there. Let's start with BMF because, I mean, I saw an interview, and I really want you to elaborate on this because I couldn't agree with you more. In the interview, you talked about BMF, and you said people really want to see something real. They want realness. They want authenticity. Is that what your focus was going into the series, or did you say, hey, once you started working going through a couple of scripts, you're saying, hey, this is what it needs? In other words, did you have it beforehand, or were you in the moment when you said, hey, we need to get a little deeper and a little more real with this thing?
I had it beforehand. I mean, the obvious thing is this is all based on a true story. So the Flannery family, Meech and Terry, they are real people. Charles Flannery, who is with the ancestors now, is no longer with us, was real, and Lucille Flannery is real. And, I had an opportunity to talk to Miss Lucille about her and her husband, about their relationship with their kids and how they raised them and what it was like for them in Detroit. And, the saying goes, all we want to look at and deal with as Black folks is give them something they can feel. And the best way to do that is to be authentic, is to tell the truth. Because, the saying goes, you can't lie in life and tell the truth on stage. And so, it's my job as the actor, as the vessel, to really reach back to a place and ask myself, what was Charles going through? What was he dealing with? And, being a devotee of August Wilson, I have a deep-seated passion and understanding for our ancestors, basically, for those who came before us. I believe that there's a saying that there was a time when boats were made of wood and men were made of steel. And I believe men like Charles, who worked every day, worked with their hands, tired, working 2 and 3 jobs, these were men that were made of steel. And, they believed in certain things. They believed in hard work. They believed in, truth. They were God-fearing, and they believed in family. And that's the kind of man he was. And that's the kind of, man I wanted to portray and put forward on the screen so that we create this sort of origin story for people to watch and follow and know that these kids did come from a good family. They were loved. They did go to church. They were God-fearing. And it's really more of what society, where we were Reaganomics at the time in the 80s and where we were coming back, of oil embargo in the 70s and how, we were talking about manufacturing leaving our country, things going overseas, and how, these Midwestern cities became the Rust Belt. And so we're looking at a country, a state and a community that let these kids down, that let the populace, the society down. So, and that's all we're reflecting in Black Mafia Family.
You reference Fences, you reference August Wilson, and obviously brought to mind your work in Fences as Lions, but even in, The Hate You Give, 7 Seconds, now Black Mafia Family, and you just spoke to it, that your guiding star, if you will, seems to be portraying a 3-dimensional look, an authentic, humanizing look at black men and black fathers? Like, when did that become a calling for you, a mission for you? You really, there's this theme in everything I read and see from you. There's a theme about honoring the men that came before you and the men that molded and influenced you, and giving society a multidimensional look at black men. When did that become your guiding star? And also, how challenging is that when it comes to executing that philosophy on camera, given some of the challenges of Hollywood?
That, I think that was always in me. I'm born and raised in Oakland, California, and I like to think that you walk in the and live in the spirit of the Panther. And there's all these. I was raised. I came from a single parent family, but I was raised by the community. I was raised by black men, and so again, this was a time where you're talking about the Oaklands, the Detroits, the Chicagos, New Yorks, Bostons, where black folks were getting their asses kicked, pardon me. And so you saw men having to live life a certain way, conduct themselves a certain way. And I was drawn to that, and so for me, it's an honoring of them, but also the men who helped raise me in the acting and theater community, the black men. And these were men of another time. A lot of them didn't have the opportunity to go to theater school. They had to sort of learn it, by doing plays, and working second jobs. And some were veterans of the military and whatnot. And so I really had an opportunity to sit down and absorb a lot of their life, a lot of their struggle. And so for me, it's an honoring of both where I came from, and it's also an honoring of the men, the actors who came before me, who are basically unsung. And so, people don't know their names. They didn't see a lot of their work, but I did. And their work had a profound effect on me because it was truth telling. And I think that's important, that we're looking for. The saying goes, there's no such thing as right or wrong. There is only truth. And so when you're working with brothers and sisters who have no choice but to tell the truth, that for me, that really engaged me and said, I have to take this mantle forward and take the baton and do my part. And I think I've done that. And I think that for me, we can't deny talent, and you can't deny truth. So I had an opportunity when I went to school to hone my skill, to develop a talent. And then in developing that talent, what happens is you develop a level of consciousness and conscientiousness that you have to you have to put with the talent, right? So that it's incumbent upon me now to sort of, as I put these things together, be conscious and conscientious about the parts that I take. Be conscious about how I approach certain roles. Certain roles you take, you might not always care for it, but you have to find a portal in that is human and that is steeped in truth.
You mentioned earlier, Russell, that you're a devotee of August Wilson. I went to college in Pittsburgh, and so I was able to see some of the spaces and some of the places that he talked about. He talked about the Hill District. That's where I used to get, when I had hair, that's where I used to get my hair cut. Just like a lot of these people sounded so familiar to me. I felt like he brought a poetry, and not a forced poetry, to ordinary circumstances and ordinary people. That's just one of the very surface things that I got out of August Wilson. There's so many layers to him. What made you a devotee of August Wilson, and what still speaks to you to this day? I know there are many things, and that's a tough question, but what speaks to you?
Absolutely. Again, as I said, when I came out of high school, what they do. Not high school, but when I came out of college, what happens in theater schools is that they break you down to build you up. You know what I mean? And it's much like when athletes, when you're working out, you have to tear the body down and build it back up so you can build it up stronger. Well, oftentimes what happens when you go to you lose part of yourself. You lose part of your essence. You lose those things that sort of make you great, as they're teaching you about, Shakespeare and Ibsen and all the classics, if you will. And I'll never forget, I came out, having that inauthentic Black theatrical theater voice, you know what I mean? A la James Murphy, something like that, you know? And I was auditioning for New York Undercover. And so I walk in for New York Undercover, I'm in audition for New York Undercover, and I'm in there, yes, Holt, you know, I'm ghetto man number 3. And so they said, I did my audition, and they said, this is for a brother, he's a drug dealer. I was like, yes. They said, he's he's uptown, New York, up in the Bronx. I was like, yes. Thank you very much.
You know what this is for, right?
Right. But so what happened though, so to answer your question directly, Michael, is that when I got introduced to August, I was reintroduced to a different level, different sensibility of Blackness. And a soulfulness and an essence. And it was through the material and also through the actors that I was working with. I was able to sort of find my rhythm again, get that brother who came from Oakland, who grew up listening to hip hop, all that kind of stuff. And I was able to infuse it into the work. And so from there, August just, the words, his rhythms, his poetry just spoke to me. They just constantly sang to me. And I began to understand who I am a little bit better and where I come from and what it means to tell our truth. And August really chronicled that. And I wanted to be a vessel of his to, just to help people understand that we got a lot with us. And it's not just that, we can sing and dance and entertain you, but we are thinking people, we are feeling people. And I think it's real, and I think it's important first for us as Black people to understand that and know that for real. And then we put it out to the communities at large and say, hey, you may have gotten us wrong again. And so this deserves a deeper examination about who you think we are. Let me tell you, no, who we actually are. I think that's what August did.
That actually leads me into a couple of sports-related questions I got for you, Russell. So you are set to play Don King in Hulu's Iron Mike coming up. And the first thing I thought of was, it was a Don King-like character in Creed 2, a little bit. Not as bombastic, but similar. But I know you've talked a lot in this interview and other interviews about generally arriving at truth and humanizing people. I wonder what your process has been like, and do you think it's gonna be like when it comes to trying to humanize a very complicated and mysterious figure in Don King? We don't know a whole lot about his origin story in the mainstream. So how's that process for you, taking on that role of a Don King for Iron Mike?
Well, you have to look at, again, Don is born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio. And you found he was a numbers runner. He went to prison for 4 years for killing a man. And what I read a biography, and I had to ask myself, a man who came from Cleveland, numbers runner, who looked up and found him at a point where he could now buy in to America. They say, people sell out, but some people sell in or buy in. And he had to create a narrative for himself that said, because he says only in America. And so only in America, to his point, is a Black man can be as powerful, a Black man can be as corrupt as everybody else in America, as anybody white. And that's him buying into it. Do you understand what I'm saying? And so, what I had to look at and truly examine is but he's still Black. And so I believe the humanity in him had to push a lot of that humanity down here to just suppress it in order to do a lot of these dastardly deeds that we hear. And I believe that he convinced himself that I am not going to let America take advantage of me the way they have my other sisters and brethren. I'm going to be part, I'm going to play into what America is and what it has done and what it really represents. It reps power, corruption, and all of those things. So I'm going to be a part of that, whether it be a part of the solution, ones to say, or a part of the problem. But I'm going to be an American. But I do believe that you have to suppress a lot of your pain as a Black man, a lot of the pain that has happened to you in this country coming up, what was happening to him when he was young, when he was growing up. And, you know, as I said, in the Midwest of Cleveland, all the racism and everything that he had to deal with. And you're going to say what I think you convince yourself is to say, not me anymore. I'm not going to be the one. And so the thing is, America, he says, well, so his point is, if a white man can take money away from you, so can a Black man. If a white man can rob you, so can a Black man. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's, you know, in his thought process. So, and that's only in America.
Thank you for the little preview there. That was good. Thank you for the little preview.
That's great. That's great.
Want to take it back a bit, man, because you know, a lot of broader audience, or a lot of mainstream audience, if you will, first got introduced to you damn near 20 years ago now on Playmakers.
Yeah.
And I wonder if I'll phrase it to you like this: I wonder if you watch some of what happens in professional sports, but specifically in the NFL, in professional football. And as controversial as Playmakers was in the early 2000s, look at what's happening in reality right now and be like, man, we might have undersold the reel. We might not have been as provocative as we needed to be, given all the stuff that we know when it comes to how the sausage is being made. You ever watch the NFL and the headlines now and be like, man, this is stranger than fiction?
Absolutely. And the thing is, you know, nobody was ready to let the cat out the bag. They, you know, I think, you know, a lot of these professional organizations, you know, they really believe that they could for so long suppress the truths, for so long control the narrative. And I think we were still at the tail end of the time where they were able to control the narrative. They were able to suppress the truth. And Playmakers was taking the lid off of the truth and letting it out. And, you know, it didn't last much longer. And so now, because of social media, because of mainstream media, or what have you, you can no longer suppress the truth. You can no longer control the narrative. And I think that's what we're finding. And also, you know, there's a lot of strange stuff happening out here in the sports world, you know, for good and for bad.
Well, I mean, it's funny that I remember I was a huge fan of the show. It was amazing that the NFL, we knew it. The NFL just kind of swooped in. We're like, no, we don't want that. Now fast forward about what? That was like 02, 03, somewhere around there.
Yeah. If I may interject real quick. I ran into Stephen A. Back in the day on right in front of in Times Square, right in front of the ABC Good Morning America set right there. And he said, hey, brother, he said, I love you on Playmakers. He said, you know they ain't gonna keep you on the air, right?
Hey, well, listen, they didn't, but you know, you can try to suppress it, but eventually the truth does come out. Bring this full circle, the truth comes out. So 2017, I believe it was, with Kaepernick. And so you're a 49ers fan. What was your thought at the time? You go back to Colin Kaepernick first sitting down, then taking the knee, and that becoming a story for a team that wasn't very good, but he was the story. How did you process that at the time as a black man in America and as a 49ers fan?
You know, I mean, as a black man, I was proud of Kaepernick for what he did, for the stance he took. You know, and the reality of it is that for us being black in America, when you make stances like that, or you make certain comments that are controversial, you realize before and in the moment that one will have to suffer certain consequences. And I think, you know, I believe that Kaepernick was aware of that, and he took it on the chin. It wasn't fair, it wasn't right, and it wasn't cool. But we all know that there is a double standard when it comes to being black. There is a double standard when it comes to the political black athlete. And, you know, we know that from, you know, Tommy Smith and John Carlos and on and on. And so I just felt like he showed a great deal of courage, in that moment, and not backing down, and for standing his ground, basically.
Well, that's a great point and a great way to let you go, because Russell, through all your work, you've embodied that same principle: courage, not backing down, being true and authentic to who you are, and representing us well, man. Congratulations, and that's a big deal. It picked up season 2 for BMF pretty quickly. That's a big deal, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's real. And you got so many other things in the works, an incredible body of work. So we appreciate how you represent it, man, and look forward to seeing you again on the vineyard. Michael didn't remember that because he was pushing the stroller. But I'm looking forward to seeing you. See, at the time, Michael ain't had no kids to distract him. He had his right after that.
Okay. And now I got little ones now. Mine are 6 and 4, and I'm like, ah.
Oh, congratulations, man. See,
Thank you.
15,
right.
13, and 9. Michael on the cusp of having teenagers. Yeah, man. They talk back. They get to talking back.
Right. They do.
Yeah, I got a little old school in me, so.
And you're getting practice on screen.
That's right.
Guilty as charged.
Yeah, you get a lot of practice.
Me too.
We appreciate you, brother.
All right,
God
thank you,
bless you.
brother.
Thank you so much.
Russell.
Thank you.